Punk revolution now. Punk suspicious among us now. Just kidding. Lil Ugly Mane. Today we're going to be reviewing Lil Ugly Mane's newest album. What is this? Volcanic Bird Explosion and The Voiced Concern. Weird ass album title, but you know what? It's Lil Ugly Mane. You already know he's working some creative, genius stuff going on. I love Lil Ugly Mane. I love the fudge out of Lil Ugly Mane. I've been listening to Lil Ugly Mane since 2012, 2013, whenever he dropped Mista Thug Isolation. I literally have been listening to him since back then, and he's just such an eccentric, creative artist doing all sorts of crazy, unique stuff with his hip-hop. It's just amazing. He's making some amazing, like, trippy, southern Memphis kind of rap, and then he's doing some experimental sound collage stuff. Like, you never know what you're gonna get with him. He's a genius. I'm so grateful that he is continuing to release music, so I'm very excited for this. Let's start by taking a look at the album cover. This is a really freaking weird album cover, but I freaking love it because you got this, like, it's like almost like a beautiful painting of a guy who's like leaning over, maybe he's at a bar or something like that, and then you got these kind of weird like puppets kind of imposed on this painting or something. I'm not really sure. You got this duck and this weird puppet guy. The duck kind of makes me uncomfortable. It kind of reminds me of that George Lucas produced movie, Howard the Duck, really fucking weird movie. So it's a weird album cover, kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, kind of cute in a funny weird way. I don't know, it's eccentric as hell. I'm assuming that bird is the volcanic bird enemy. I said volcanic bird explosion at the beginning, but how am I supposed to say the album title correctly? How do you, like, what is this? Volcanic bird enemy and the voice concern. Weird album title, weird album cover. This is basically just like not a hip-hop album at all. You might just get like little drops of hip-hop, trip-hop influence in the background for a little bit in a song, but like 98% of this album, there's no hip-hop. It's psychedelic music, neo-psychedelia, which I'm excited about because, one, I love Lil Ugly Mane. I'm excited to see him developing and growing as an artist and trying new things because we know he's a fucking talented producer, so of course he's gonna be able to excel in other genres. Thank God we're getting that genius brain expanding into other genres because he's already pretty much mastered the genre of hip-hop, so that's exciting to see. And then second off, I love psychedelic music. I love neo-psychedelia, but sometimes psychedelic, neo-psychedelia can be kind of generic, kind of just regurgitating influences of other, you know, if you're just playing indie pop and then you throw a little reverb on it and put a little synths in there and call that psychedelic, that's not gonna do much for me. But if you have Lil Ugly Mane, this fucking weirdo with a completely different musical background of most hip-hop artists, I'm like, this is gonna be fucking cool as hell. And you can already see, you start listening to this album, you can already tell in the first few tracks, like, you're in for a really, really psychedelic trip. Like, really, like, it reminds me of, like, United States of America, like classic 60s, like let's just get trippy as hell with the weirdest little kind of creepy CIA-funded circus music, kind of put that into the music or whatever. It's simultaneously like childish and so cute and beautiful and like pleasant, like a fun, pleasant little psychedelic trip, which is what psychedelic music is all about. But then there's just kind of like creepy eeriness too. It's almost like, I don't know, like I would compare it to like an antique dollhouse you see at like an antique store or something like that. Like, yes, it's a dollhouse, it's cute, it's made for children, but you look at the dolls and stuff, and because they're just so from like the 60s or whatever, they just look a little creepy. So it's mostly cute, a little bit of creepy though. Maybe sometimes in the music you'll hear a little bit of dissonance come in, just a synth that's like a little dissonant. That's actually something that Lil Ugly Mane would do back in his hip-hop stuff. He would do the same thing. He'd put like a trippy hip-hop track together and then put one little creepy like dissonant flute in there or whatever. So even though it's a totally different style, musically you can tell he's got the same sort of like, his creative juices are flowing in a similar way. So I'm so excited about that, and it sounds so fucking good. And this is really completely new stuff for him. As you listen through this album, you're basically gonna hear him exploring all sorts of different things. We got like the song Human Fly, for example, which has this sort of, the instrumentation here, it certainly reminds me actually a lot of like Animal Collective, like Fall Be Kind. Like they have some weird little electronic sort of cute sample that repeats, and then we have Lil Ugly Mane with this really catchy melody singing on top of it that kind of grows throughout the song. I mean, that's so freaking cool. We have the song Styrofoam, which is so fucking awesome too. It sounds almost like The Caretaker, like a vintage kind of crackling vinyl playing some old music, and then we have Lil Ugly Mane actually kind of singing on top of it. It's Lil Ugly Mane singing it. that's pretty awesome. We all know he's a great rapper, but now we get to hear him sing, and I love his singing voice because he sounds older. It literally sounds like, it's so funny kind of to visualize this rapper, Lil Ugly Mane, like growing up a decade later. Now he's older and wants to kind of have more philosophical, gentle, whispery old man singing. I mean, he's not that old, but you know, he's older, and as he's singing, you hear these lyrics that, yes, the melodies are catchy, he's pretty good at making melodies, but the lyrics are like, if you listen closely, they're kind of depressive, still very creative lyrics, absolutely, but kind of shifting to a more like introspective and depressive sort of lyrics, which is honestly really cool to see him develop like that. We also have songs like Headboard that kind of just, the production is just like a little bit more full. The synths are a little bit taking up more space. We got some guitars, like bringing some like rock music coming in here. We got some real drums coming in through this album sometimes too. And this kind of reminds me a little bit more of like chill wave or like traditional kind of like psychedelic synth pop. So he's kind of doing he's running the whole gamut. He's doing these experimental Animal Collective indie, somewhat more minimal kind of psychedelic music, and then he's kind of doing the more like the psychedelic synth pop stuff. So you can just tell like this is an hour-long album. That's a long-ass album, and throughout most of this album, it sounds like he's just like, you know, he's playing around, he's experimenting, and I think that sounds really fun and really interesting, and I love to hear him like have this kind of inspiration and creative passion instead of just putting out another hip-hop album, which would absolutely be good, but we've already, I mean, like I said, Lil Ugly Mane kind of just he's already kind of mastered the genre of Lil Ugly Mane style hip-hop, and I'm so glad to see him reaching out and exploring and doing all this other stuff. So for me, this is such a cool album to listen to. Listen to someone just exploring, feeling creatively inspired. Every time I listen to it, you just hear new samples, new weird little things. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. My only real issues with this album would be that I feel like his vocals are, you know, it seems like he's still trying to get comfortable singing. It sounds really quiet. Like, he could use a little bit more confidence in his singing, I think. It just sounds so whispery and stuff, and that's fine, but for an hour long, it does get a little monotonous, and some of these melodies are really nice, and I wish he would just kind of lean into his singing voice a little bit more with more confidence. I think that would be great. And also, you know, this is an hour-long album. It does seem a little bit like like I said, it sounds like he's exploring, trying different things out, kind of figuring out how does he want to do this whole neo-psychedelic thing, and I think that's cool, but like it does seem a little bit like, you know, he's still trying to master this genre, so this whole album doesn't really have a cohesive creative vision. I feel like the second half has a little bit more songs that I'm not as excited as compared to the first half. I mean, it's still all cool stuff, but ultimately, you know, I think this is kind of a transition album for him. He's realized now, like, wow, I can do anything. I don't have to just stick to hip-hop, and I can do other shit, and I can be really fucking cool, but now it's time for him to, like, master it, figure out what works best, and make a cohesive album, and maybe take some more risks. There's not too, I mean, there's a lot of really cool production in here, but there's no like major massive risks that stand out to me that like is like, whoa, that is some experimental crazy shit, even though I know Lil Ugly Mane has it inside him. So hopefully, I mean, I'm really digging this album a lot. I love listening to it. I love seeing Lil Ugly Mane's progression, and I love just the fucking crazy cool production, and I love psychedelic stuff, so I really enjoy it. But hopefully he can make something a little bit more cohesive in the future. So I'm giving this a 7.9 out of 10. I really like it a lot. I could actually imagine this being polarizing, where some people are gonna love it, some people are not gonna get it. But I think it's fucking cool, and I cannot wait. I'm so glad. Like, I really thought we were done with Lil Ugly Mane releasing some good music, but he obviously still has a lot of talent in him. So, great job, Lil Ugly Mane. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Punk Revolution. Have a wonderful Among Us now.